Historians that study ancient people and their lifestyles, especially those in Egypt and the Middle East, have long looked to the Bible as a sort of historical roadmap to provide a starting point in the search for ancient artifacts and archaeological sites. Although the Bible is the religious guidepost for Christianity, several parables and tales within it are based on actual historical events that can tell us what life was like all those years ago. The difficulty lies in finding evidence that can help us determine which aspects are embellished and which are accurate historical occurrences. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be looking at 3 interesting biblical discoveries that shed some light on previous events. Studies in ice cores found in Mount Kilimanjaro have revealed that a drought did take place 3,600 years ago. Although the biblical story of Joseph is one that is well documented, not only in the Christian Bible but also in the Torah and the Quran, it has generally been treated as a highly dramatized story, very loosely based on possible historical events that are intended to teach a lesson rather than act as a definitive record of what occurred. However, some compelling evidence has emerged in Egypt that seems to indicate that there might be more truth to the story than first believed. The story begins with Joseph, the 11th of 12 sons, who was highly favored by his father Jacob, much to the irritation of the 11 other brothers. He was gifted a token of this favoritism in the form of a lavishly colored coat that sparked the jealousy of his other brothers. The Bible says that the coat was colored with red and purple dyes, which were the most prestigious and valuable colors in the ancient world due to their extreme cost and difficulty in procurement. Faced with such a blatant display of partiality and frightened of the meaning behind strange dreams that he kept having, Joseph's brothers sold him to an Egyptian slave merchant and returned the coat to Jacob, smeared with goat's blood and claiming that Joseph had been killed. Once in Egypt, Joseph was imprisoned, but his continuing prophetic dreams and skills in interpretation allowed him to gain the attention of the Pharaoh, who was troubled with disturbing dreams. Joseph said that the Pharaoh's dreams indicated that there were to be 7 years of plenty in Egypt, followed by 7 years of famine, and he was given the task of advising the Pharaoh in preparations for the years of famine. During this time, Joseph rose through the ranks of the Egyptian court and quickly became one of the most prominent members of the government, as he oversaw grain storage and preparations to see Egypt through the impending 7 years of famine. There has never been a record of any high-ranking Egyptian during this period who was called Joseph, and because it was highly unlikely that a foreign servant-turned-prisoner could reach the ranks of top advisor to the Pharaoh, it was always thought that this story was more of a richly embellished parable than a factual tale recounting actual events. However, a recent discovery in Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania has lent some credence to Joseph's story. Mount Kilimanjaro is the source of the Nile River's water, and the Nile River was, and still is, the lifeblood of Egypt. Without it full and flowing, crops and livestock would weaken and die, and famine would spread across the land, just as Joseph predicted in his interpretations of the Pharaoh's dreams. Also, studies of Kilimanjaro ice cores have found that there was a massive drought that took place about 3,600 years ago, around the same time that Joseph would have been advising the king. Additionally, a canal that was built to keep the Nile River branches open and flowing, and that allowed the tributaries around it to remain fertile, did such an excellent job that it is still in use today and functions successfully. Nobody knows who built the canal, but its Arabic name has been passed down from ancient times by the people who live nearby and translates to the waterway of Joseph, leading many to believe that it was built by Joseph in an effort to reduce the impact of the famine. While we may never know which parts of the story are true and which are myth, it certainly seems that these historical discoveries lend credence to the biblical events. The Ossuary of Caiaphas. Caiaphas, also referred to as Joseph ben Caiaphas, is a biblical figure who is notorious as the Jewish high priest that presided over the Sanhedrin trial of Jesus and was instrumental in the plot to kill Jesus. He is mentioned several times throughout the New Testament, and his existence is a matter of historical fact due to the writings of Josephus, who was a 1st century Jewish extra-biblical historian who wrote of the dates of Caiaphas' rule as high priest and what some of his responsibilities in this position might entail, referring to him as Joseph, who was called Caiaphas of the high priesthood. However, although the role of high priest was one of great prestige, Josephus does not describe details that occurred during his reign, other than that he ruled in a very turbulent time. The Bible spends much more time discussing one aspect of his priesthood, that is, his involvement in the eventual crucifixion of Jesus, which has been highly documented throughout the New Testament, making him one of the key individuals in the Christian story of Jesus' death and subsequent resurrection. Despite being such a notorious public figure, historians had been unable to determine the final resting place of his body, or even further evidence as to whether he existed at all. This was until some new evidence emerged in the 1990s, with the discovery of an elaborately carved stone ossuary containing the bones of what was determined to be a 60-year-old man. The ossuary, although decorated with intricate designs, was labelled with a somewhat haphazardly carved inscription: Joseph, son of Caiaphas. Was this at last the body of the infamous high priest? Historians are divided on the matter. Some say that because the inscription is only lightly engraved and does not mention his title as high priest, which is highly unusual for someone with such a highly regarded position, the body inside cannot be assumed to be that of Caiaphas. However, supporters of the ossuary point to the fact that the box dates to the 1st century and is of an appropriate age to contain Caiaphas' bones, as well as the fact that the elaborate carvings, excluding the inscription, are incredibly ornate and could only have been done by a skilled craftsman. Such a design would only have been able to be afforded by someone of Caiaphas' ranking. If anything, the Caiaphas ossuary only throws more mystery onto the matter of who lies in the great stone chest. Is it really the infamous historical figure, or merely a wealthy individual who had the misfortune to have his tomb vandalized with somebody else's name? Only time will tell. Jesus' childhood home in Nazareth. In the 1880s, nuns building the Sisters of Nazareth convent stumbled upon an ancient cistern, which they immediately began evacuating and salvaging. Finding important archaeological remnants in these lands where humans have been settled for thousands of years is not altogether uncommon. So at first, the nuns were not aware of exactly how important their find could be. Subsequent analysis in recent years has confirmed that the site was the location of many changes throughout the years. Besides the cistern, there was evidence of a dwelling of some sort dating back to the 1st century. It is also believed that the site had been used as a quarry and a tomb. There are also remnants that point to its possible use as a cave church, and that a Byzantine church had been constructed above the site. University of Reading archaeologist Ken Dark has studied these remains and believes that the cave church could be the one that's mentioned by Egeria, a pilgrim in 3080 AD who recorded her travels to the Holy Land. He also suspects that the old Byzantine church may be the Church of the Nutrition, which was built to commemorate the place that Jesus Christ was raised and previously thought lost forever, as it burned down in 1200 AD, and the site was not used again until construction of the Sisters of Nazareth convent began. Of course, if the church really is the Church of Nutrition, that leads archaeologists to conclude that the buried dwelling might very well be the former childhood home of Jesus of Nazareth, and evidence strongly suggests that this is the case. The church matches records from historian Adomnan in the late 7th century that mention a large elaborately carved building over a crypt with 2 Roman tombs on either side of Jesus' childhood home. Underneath the remnants of the church lies the tomb and the house, just as records say. Dark described the discovery and comparison of the remnants with Adomnan's records, saying it overlay a crypt. In the crypt, just as he says, there are 2 Roman period tombs, and between them there's a house, and that house, Adomnan says, is the place where Jesus was brought up. So we found the church, we found the crypt, we found the house. While historians agree that all signs point to the fact that the remains are truly those of the Church of Nutrition, not everyone is entirely convinced that the ancient remains below are truly those of Jesus' childhood home. Dark goes on to say the following: "I can be confident that this is the house that the Byzantines believed, and was probably believed in the 4th century to be Jesus' childhood home. Only time will tell whether the site truly was the place where Jesus Christ himself was raised, and for now we must continue the search for answers." But what do you make of these 3 biblical discoveries? Are you convinced? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.